I'm here with my boy, my buddy, my friend, my brother, somebody I look up to, and somebody I highly respect. So I kind of feel like this is going to be like a Arsenio Hall talking to Eddie Murphy kind of conversation. The one and the only brother, Shawn Dove. Welcome to Yeah, I Said It. And I'm so blessed to have you on today, man.
My brother, Darren, this is mutual admiration and love, society and relationships. So everything that you said to introduce me and my relationship to you, I boomerang that back to you and put a little extra dab of love on it to give you back even more. And I just want to say that I'm thrilled to be on your media platform. You know,
Thank
one
you,
of
brother.
my mantras is that we have to become masters of our own media, and
Amen.
you are demonstrating that right now. So I just had one quick question: who's Arsenio and who's Eddie?
I have no idea. It's so ridiculous.
Okay, I guess I got it now. That was good. That was good. You are multi-talented. Renaissance man. So, that was a good Eddie, and you answered my question, brother.
Awesome. So, Shawn, we get into this. Tell everyone watching who may not know you, may not know about your work, who you are, what you've done. Tell them what you believe they should know about you. You know, married, children, where you grew up, and what your scope of work has been, and what you're doing now.
Wow, that's so much. I think that the most important line of my bio, Darren, is the bottom line. Married to my divine mate, Desiree, 26 years, and I'm the father of Nia, Maya, Cameron, and Caleb. And, and we have journeyed the fatherhood journey together. You know that there are days when I'm like, forgive them, Lord. They know not that they dance on my last nerve. And I would say after all is said and done, that is the most important thing. I had an executive coach a couple of years ago asked me to do an assignment about writing my eulogy. Right, and I lead a national campaign for Black male achievement, which is in the process of sunsetting, and I've been blessed to do some really phenomenal work and be in service with others around community building and launching and building Beacon School movements, publishing, launching the campaign for Black male achievement in philanthropy, and the eulogy wasn't all about that, right? It was there in the bottom, but it was really about the relationships and how blessed I have been. And I tell my wife, Desiree, and this is my second marriage, right? And, I got married when I was 24 the first time, right? And didn't even know who I was, right? But that's a whole, we can talk about that also. And I often have to remind myself that I must have been blessed in the previous life in order to get the blessings that I am getting now. And I'm a native New Yorker. I've lived in every borough except for Staten Island, raised by a phenomenal single mom, a Jamaican mom, Deanna, who was a creative, an entrepreneur, community builder, and did not grow up with my dad, right? Got to know my father, and he is still alive. My mother just turned 80 in April.
Wow.
And, never had one day when I woke up to say, good morning, Dad, right? And, and found out last year that during November and hearing stories from my mom, Jamaican, West Indian, sometimes is not as expressive, right? And I knew that my mom loved me immeasurably, but I didn't hear that all the time.
Right.
But it wasn't until last year that when her mom died, and we were having a conversation that she shared that when I was born, I was the first baby she had ever held in her life. And I was like, wow, just the power of stories. And I was born in Bellevue Hospital, right? And I'm a child in 1962. I know I don't look like it,
Not at all.
I'll be 58 this month rather.
Wow.
And growing up, Bellevue had a reputation, Bellevue
Yes.
had a reputation. That's where the insane, the crazy people, right? And so for a
Right.
long time, I was embarrassed to tell that story, right? That I was born in Bellevue Hospital, and my mother tells the story that she was delivering in an observation room where there were a bunch of interns that were watching my delivery. And she said it was a difficult labor. And she said, she had interns watching, cheering the delivery on. And when I finally popped out in her eyes, she said there was a bunch of applause. And I was like, oh, wow. So I would want to also say, I could just talk an hour on just that one question. And living in every borough, and I talk about my mother being a entrepreneur and community builder, a transformative growing up experience for me is that, my mother is a single mom. We lived in the South Bronx on 173rd Street and Bryan Avenue, and she needed childcare. And she found through word of mouth, right, long before a text or a tweet or, Googling somebody, a woman by the name of Lillian Smith, who lived on 119th Street in Lenox Avenue, who took care of children. It was a child care service, right? She was taking care of her own granddaughter. And so during the week, I lived with my godmother. We called her Lel on 119th Street and Lenox Avenue. I tell folks that I have a PhD from UCLA,
Yep.
University in the corner of Lenox Avenue.
Right.
I think we might have been in a class or two together.
Yes, sir.
And the beauty of that experience when you think of community, and I don't know if you ever saw the movie with Hill Harper, Lackawanna Blues?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so that's my experience living with Lel, right? So it was one of big old Harlem apartments. She had boarders. She took care of children. And she ran numbers with Nicky Barnes's father, Roy Barnes. And so that was like lots of activity, sense of community. And if I ventured from 119th Street and Lenox Avenue to 7th Avenue, there was this sense of like, oh, that's one of Lel's kids. What are you doing down here? Get your butt back to Lenox Avenue. And long before a text or a tweet or anything, by the time I got to one block, she knew that I had a strayed. And I would just say, and just in closing, like I said, I can go, I'm just in 4th grade now, right? So I'm just getting into the point of 4th grade. And my mother and I, we moved in exclusively together for 5th grade and moved from the South Bronx and Harlem down to the Upper West Side. And, a couple of years or a year after I moved down to the Upper West Side, found this youth program called the Dome Project, which was another transformational experience for me. I thought I wanted to sell loose joints on the corner of 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. Had a whole lot of catchy slogans, pass me by, you won't get high. And one of my friends, who I'm still in contact with, we have a group of us on the WhatsApp thread. He told me about this youth program that was giving away sneakers and uniforms for the basketball team. And it was in the basement of All Angels Church on 80th Street off of Broadway, and walked in, and it was a youth program called the Dome Project. Got my first job there, was on the basketball team. And when I first got there, they said they had given away the last, uniform. In sneakers, I eventually got on the team. And John Simon was the executive director there and the founder, and he was a mentor for all of us. And then so many of us are still together. And what I will say about that is that before we got on the court, we had to get in a circle and read. You know, he combined our love for basketball with literacy. And we read together out loud Man Child in the Promised Land by Claude Brown, and also Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, right? And, you know, I've gone on to replicate a lot of that early stuff. I've came back to become the executive director of this youth program, the Dome, during my career. And, you know, for the last 12 years, I have led the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, which is a national philanthropic intermediary organization, supporting leaders and men and women in organizations committed to improving the life outcomes for Black men and boys. You know, I won't go through all that I've done, but a formative decade was also working at the Harlem Children's Home, and launching one of the first beacons, and starting a newspaper called Harlem Overheard, and creating the Truth Fitness and Nutrition, you know, center. So I've just been blessed with, Darren, great people in my life that have seen things in me before I have seen things in myself. I have just had opportunities just to bounce back from failure and things of that nature. September 1st marked, you know, 31 years in recovery for me from drinking and drugging. And the irony, you know, 3 decades ago, if someone said to me, if you Google Black male achievement, 30 years ago, I would have said, what's Google?
What's
but,
Google, right?
you know, just work with me here. They would have said, your name would have come up. And, you know, 31 years ago, I was ready to jump on the tracks at Penn Station and 8th Avenue and grab the 3rd rail at the end of my addiction, my run, right? And I think it's really important to say that because this is National Suicide Prevention Month.
Yeah.
And that there is somebody that may be listening to this, that may be on the edge and considering suicide. And this year has posed, you know, look, being Black in America under the best of conditions is emotionally, psychologically challenging and oppressive. But this year has been something. So I wanted to lift that up. And I also wanted to lift up, so this is the kind of thing is where, you know, you just ask one question and you won't get in another, but I promise you'll get another question. So I wanted to lift that up, and I also wanted to dedicate this conversation, this Yeah, I Said It conversation, to Brother Clyde Frazier Jr. And Clyde Frazier Jr., son of Clyde Frazier. And I remember when we were launching a Beacon School, and Jeff Canada said, we're gonna meet with Clyde Frazier. We were launching this Beacon School on 144th Street and 7th Avenue. I thought it was Clyde Frazier, the basketball player. When he walked into the meeting, it was Clyde Frazier, community organizer. He was a leader with the Fred Samuels Democratic Club.
Yes.
But his son, Clyde Frazier Jr., he launched this basketball tournament for girls called Slam Jam. And they used to have their tournament in the Beacon School. And I used to open up the school on Saturday and Sunday mornings, and they would have their practice. And I want to dedicate this conversation to him because, you know, yesterday was September 11th, right?
Yep.
And on September 10th, 2001, you know, I had moved from Harlem to Queens, and it just so happened I lived across the street from Clyde Frazier Jr. September 10th, 2001, I had to go to the bank on Hillside Avenue and that morning do some business, and bumped into Clyde Frazier Jr. And he had since stopped doing the tournament at the County Cullen Community Center in Harlem and took it to St. John's. And while his day job was, he was an IRS enforcement agent, Slam Jam was his passion. And I remember talking to him on, he was just sharing his, how he wanted to blow it up and what he wanted to do with it. And, you know, we were both at the bank, and he worked at the Twin Towers in the South Tower. And that was Monday, September 10th, where he decided to come to the bank before going to work. The morning of September 11th, he went straight to work. And that morning, he died at the, you know, the tragedy of September 11th. And I bring him up not so much to create a somber tone to this conversation, but you do know that one of my mission mantras is to stop stalling on your calling and just jump in. And little did either one of us know, having this conversation, talking about the, you know, he had less than 24 hours to live.
Wow.
So I want to just dedicate that this conversation to Clyde Frazier Jr.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. This is so, you know, the more we know each other, right, and the more details I hear about your story, the more I realize how many parallels there are, right? Because your awakening happened on 80th Street on the Upper West Side, right? And mine happened on 71st Street, right? Because I became friends with the family of James Baldwin. Wow. And and I didn't even know my dear friend was his niece. And I used to hang out down there with her, and I went down to see, we were watching Saturday Night Live with Eddie Murphy. Here he comes again, with Buckwheat. And they had the thing where Buckwheat got assassinated. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there watching, I started laughing, and Aisha's Aunt Paula looks at me and says, "You think it's funny seeing a black man assassinated in front of the United States of America?" Here, she gave me a stack of books and told me to read them before I came back. One of them was Man, Child in the Promised Land, Native Son, Malcolm X on Afro-American History, and Go Tell It on the Mountain. Mm. And I had to read those books before I was allowed back in their home. And I had to discuss what those books meant to me with them when I came back. So my awakening happened a few blocks away.
Wow. So right? 71st Street, what avenue?
71st between Broadway and Columbus.
So look, and I went to IS 44 on 77th Street in Columbus Avenue, 77 Columbus. So who knew we probably passed each other in each other's orbit, right? You know, and I used to play ball down in Riverside Park on 77th Street. Oh, no. One of the recurring things, one of the books I've read is like What to Say When You're Talking to Yourself. And one of the mantras I have been sharing with myself during this year, especially, is that all is in divine order, right? And even when seemingly bad and horrific things happen, right? And we may have passed each other, right? I might have sold you a nickel bag, right? And little did we know that God had a plan.
Right.
That 30 plus years later, or it might have even been longer than that.
Yeah, almost 40 at this point, yeah.
You know, these two brothers would connect and would, you know, they're connecting and they're sparking together, would together create some great things. Because I'm going to be 58 this month. How old are you?
I'll be 57 in January.
January, right? So we are of the same.
Yeah, same era. So let me ask you this. In retrospect, because you kind of answered the second question that I had already about how you became interested in Black male achievement. Now, as you said, the campaign for Black male achievement is sunsetting, in a few months. In retrospect, what do you think your footprint has been, and is there anything you would do differently, and is there anything that experience is going to springboard you into?
Wow, yeah. So I started working in the field and movement of Black male achievement on September 25th, 1962, right? And I say that, right, that we are all the embodiment and epitome of Black male achievement. And I came to the Open Society Foundations in 2008 to launch and lead what was supposed to be a 3-year campaign to improve the life outcomes of Black men and boys. And so here we are 12 years later, and we are sunsetting. However, the movement is not sunsetting. I am not sunsetting. And I think the imprint has been, phenomenal, right? Because when I started the campaign, and I didn't start it by myself, right? It was partners and collaborators, but I had experts tell me, this is not a field. This is not a field of Black male achievement, right? And I wasn't smart enough or compliant enough to agree with them. Right. And I do believe in, the future resides in your mouth, to speak a thing, right? And I started calling it a field. And so one imprint is that, 12 years ago, a field or a formalized movement of Black male achievement didn't exist on one hand, although we do know that this is 401 years of work, right? This is not a new work. I think another imprint, and Lord, there are many, is that even in the naming of the campaign, we chose to create an affirmative asset-based framing of Black male achievement. That this was not about marginalized men,
right?
Not about disconnected dads. It was not about a deficit lens and narrative. And so even in the progressive halls of philanthropy where I was, some folks could not get their heads around Black men and achievement in the same sentence, in the same title, right? And so one of the things that we have done is, we have helped to catalyze a ethos of love, safety, and belonging for not only just Black men and boys, right? But the leaders that have been toiling in this work and being able to say, we know, like, I see your Kennedy uniform behind you, the importance of being able to say, I'm down on a team. I have this sense of belonging, right? And so we've helped to create that ethos. And we've helped to seed so many national and local initiatives, from Cities United, that focuses on preventing and eliminating violent deaths of Black men and boys across the nation, with a framework of creating safe, healthy, and hopeful communities. We launched the first ever fellowship in partnership with Echoing Green for social entrepreneurs that are investing in advancing positive outcomes for Black men and boys. I have a picture on my wall downstairs. I just put it up, of me sitting across the table in a pose like this, across from President Obama, at the time when, that was September 2013. In July of 2013, I call that the summer of the verdict and the speech, when the not guilty verdict of George Zimmerman and the murder of Trayvon Martin happened in the first week of July. And at the end of that week, the President Obama made a speech and had said some things that we were like hoping and waiting for him to elevate, in a sense. When Trayvon Martin was first murdered, he said, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. During this speech, he was like, said, I was Trayvon Martin 30 years ago.
Remember that.
And so being able to, right after that speech, be in the West Wing of the White House and helping to see those. But, when we announced our sunset on May 1st, Darren, the amount of love and there was yet surprise that poured in people's lives that we had no idea that we were actually touching, right? And it was less about what CBMA did, or even what CBMA as a national organization and national platform represented, but how it made folks felt.
Right.
That's what poured in, right? And so I'm clear that work was a continuum, it's along a continuum of racial justice work, liberation and freedom fighting work. I know that what's next for me will be a mosaic of all that I've done around movement building, racial justice, social entrepreneurship, philanthropy. And so, I got some things certainly cooking. We are publishing, Nick Childs and I, a book come January called I Too Am America, on loving and leading Black men and boys. And I think it's really important, and someone needs to hear it. I know I need to say it. Narrative and the power of narrative, and the power of the narrative in our own heads, right? And we are fighting a global pandemic, right? But, there's also the pandemic within, right? The pandemic within of imposter syndrome and all of that, and so much of it infused. Tom Burrell said, in his book Brainwash, that America created, he's a pioneer in the advertising. He built the largest Black-owned advertising firm. He said, America created the most sophisticated marketing and advertising campaign to convince Black folks that we were superior. And I bring that up, the conversation within is that I had to shift my narrative because for a moment I was there in a narrative of I failed. We did some amazing work over 12 years, right? And the fact that we even negotiated a spinoff, a $10 million spinoff out of the foundation, and I had to shift and say, Shawn, don't look at the fact that you're sunsetting. Perspective is you were only supposed to be 3 years. Here you are 12 years later, and look at all that you have seeded and done with so many, and focus on that. And I want to tell someone, someone that's watching, if you can reframe your seeming failure, and reframe your future. And that's really important, right? And so there is so much to cultivate and curate. And what's interesting, CBMA, language is important in a movement, right? And the institution and ignition of even hope, right? And part of the identity and the growth and some of the challenges and tension with leading CBMA was balancing our identity as an organization on whether we were going to be the intermediary organization that connected leaders, convene and catalyze hope, or were we going to be an organization that was going to drive metrics and results and outcomes? And so I've learned a lot, but my main mission mantra is that, there's no cavalry coming to save the day in our communities, right? That we are the iconic leaders that we have been waiting for. And the other part of that quote that folks forget, after the semicolon is that we are the curators of the change we're seeking to see.
Yes.
And I will tell you, Bishop, that God has said to me in my prayers in this pandemic season and this season of change, Shawn, you don't need nary one more new idea from me. You curate all that I have already given you. In some scenarios, you need to resuscitate stuff that you thought that was long dead, roadkill, right? And mine is the discernment of what do I give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and CPR to, and what needs to stay, not needs to be resuscitated. And so I'm excited. This is an intermission season for me between my second and third acts of servant leadership. And, remembering what God has done in the past, every seeming setback.
Yes.
Has been a positioning for doing something greater, and not necessarily for me. Because I was listening to your Bible study the other night, right? Not to bring me to glory, but to bring God to glory.
Yes.
And so I'm like excited. What's in store? I'll let you ask another question, Eddie.
Wow, this is amazing. You see, one of the things you don't know is you really have no idea how much you've curated over the years. I've had the blessed perspective of watching you, knowing you 20 years now plus, and watching the whole trajectory from, the days with, John Bess and Alfonso Wyatt and all them folks come through, and then getting into the Open Foundation, getting and then starting CBMA. So when you said the CBMA was sunsetting, there was an almost visceral reaction from me. Like, no, like this is, no. It's like, it's no. It's like closing Dr. King's church or something like that. This isn't supposed to happen. But also realizing that you needed to, and this is based on conversations that we've had personally, that you needed to transform and you needed to evolve, and that evolution did not involve CBMA, and that the whole, what you created and curated in CBMA needed to evolve from CBMA to the world, because now it's not just an organization that does Black male achievement, but you've made Black male achievement a part of the national conversation, period. So CBMA can sunset, sadly, and still with those visceral reactions, which we should have when something that important ends, but also with the knowledge and understanding that the work continues and that the work has been embedded in areas in our society where it never existed before because of the work that you guys have done. So
I say thank you for that. Let me say two things, because you asked me earlier, what have I learned?
Yeah.
And you and First Lady Kim were at our 10-year anniversary event. And if there's a regret / learning, the regret is, so at that time, my internal compass was telling me it's time to move on. It's time to transition. But I didn't know, and I didn't have the tools to decipher and discern what it was that I was feeling, because I still thought I had something to prove. And that I had something to prove externally to people that cared about me,
right?
People that counted on me, and the strategic thing at that time, right? If I knew now what I knew then, what I was actually really going through was, oh, this is the time to transition and succeed for someone that's a different kind of leader to sustain the organization, right? So that's certainly one thing, right? And I want to lift up, therapy. Lord have mercy. I tell leaders in the network and whomever I speak with is that, you have a therapist, a mentor, an executive coach, and in the kind of middle of that mentoring, a mindfulness practice, right? There's meditation or yoga, or even this solitude and walking, right? I have learned so much in this year. This is been a year of healing for me. And what's funny is last year in the Dove Nest, I declared this was a year of restoration. Well, 2019 was a year of restoration. And at some point, things weren't going well. And I said to my wife, Desiree, I was like, God, I thought this was this was supposed to be the year of restoration. And in her infinite wisdom, she looked at me and she said, it can't be a year of restoration without shit difference. I was like, whoa, you're right. And I was a little nervous about declaring this to be, be careful what you ask for, right? That this is going to be a year of healing, because in order to get healing, you have to uncover sickness, disease, where you're hurt, and you got to go through. Healing is not like, I Dream of Jeannie, and some of your younger audience will be like, I Dream of Jeannie, what's that? And so, as the sun sets, it also rises, right? In another part of the world. And I was blessed, Darren, to bring in 2020 in Ghana. And I was at in partnership with the Kojo Family Foundation and the Essence Full Circle Festival. And so I brought in the year with an African sunrise on the beach of Ghana, a sunrise breakfast, right? And it was powerful, my first trip to Africa, and I could tell you even more, but who knew on January 1st in Ghana that, what was in store for 2020, and the disruption, the death, and this has been a year of purging and a year of grief, right? And in the midst of the grief, finding gratitude and grateful to be in the land of the living, because we know people that started this year. And yeah, we can talk about the iconic folks, the Chadwick Bosemans and the Kobe Bryants, but there are thousands of particularly our elders that we have lost during this pandemic. And so our generation, man, connecting, generation. I think that the 20s, this decade, has launched what I believe is a decade of deep disruption, social change. I believe that the murder of Emmett Till and what it did to help ignite and catalyze the civil rights movement in 1955. I believe the murder of George Floyd has done the same for where we are now. And it's not just George Floyd, it's Breonna Taylor and so many others. And I think that we were children, we were childs of the 60s, right? But we are born, and I'm including you with me, for such a time as this. And the iconic pictures will not be just Black men at the front of the march, right? It is multi-gender, multi-sexual orientation, multi-race. And I feel that we have just begun to see the tip of disruption, the tip of the violence that is going to continue to erupt in this nation. Look, the seeds and the soil and the roots of the nation, you know, we talk about a reckoning, is based on oppression and bullying and violence and stealing lives. And so this is a reckoning moment. And I do believe that God, you know, there was a reason why, you know, in 1962 on September 25th, I was born, and that I would be coming of age again in this moment. And I will tell you, knocking on the door of 58, when I was a kid, I thought at 58, I would be shopping for my rocking chair. And I would be, you know, on cruise control. I would be old. Right. And quite frankly, I feel I'm just getting started. Wow. And that just speaks to life and liberty and us taking care of taking care of ourselves.
Yep. I got 2 more questions, brother. Well, actually, it's one question I'm going to roll into 2 because you kind of already touched on it already. We know that you're a man of faith, and we know that you are a Black man of faith, and you're unapologetically a Black man and a man of faith. In having both your faith tested, which we all do, but our faith tested in terms of watching the evangelical right go into this whole attack mode of unabashedly supporting the person who's currently occupying the White House. What does this election mean to you? Well, what do you think? There's a reckoning, as you said, but this election is also going to be a moratorium of some sorts on our country. And what are your thoughts on that?
Wow. So I think it's the most important election of my lifetime. I remember being on the college campus the night that my freshman year when Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter, and feeling like this is going to be a shift, and we saw a shift. Let me say this, we need to change the leadership of the current administration, right? But that does not mean we have won, right? What for me this election means was like, what type of fight will we continue to be in, and what are the strategies and the tactics of our fight that we are in on November 5th or November 6th. I can't remember what election day is, but I'm registered. I think in this country, and there's a biological term when a species is fighting against extinction. And there was this article back in 2017, right, that I was reading about the last ditch efforts of white supremacist culture and white supremacy as a ideology, and what this current administration represents, I think, is a last dying fight and lunge before it dies out, right? However, what is it that we are going to build? So this election, and all of my children are home and they are all of voting age. I was like, you cannot live here and not vote. And we are fighting systemic racism, right? And so our fight has to be of systemic approach, and that we have to have an inside-outside game. We have to have a strategy for the boardroom and the block, city hall, and the corner, right? And a change in administration means that fight still continues, right? But if there isn't a change of administration, when I talk about, let's think about the 60s, right? I think that kind of disruption and civil unrest, it might be character assassination as opposed to, look, people gonna die. Let's be honest, right? The level we've seen snapshots, right? I think in a week, what we saw in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was a microcosm of what's happening. Like, there's a militia mindset.
Yes.
A militia reality that's going to cling and defend and fight for this ideology of white supremacy. And I was just on a call with two brothers earlier, and one of the brothers was sharing that, so I don't own a firearm, and I haven't, and he does. He says, look, you can't even get ammunition
right
now, right? And I am not by any means professing violence, right? But I do believe that no matter what happens, that we need to be ready to protect ourselves as a people, right? And get real clear on what your ammunition is, right? And when I say what your ammunition is, when I look at you as a spiritual leader, as a pastor, as an advocate for criminal justice reform, and formally, getting real clear how we fight and what we use and how we get information and alignment. And the other thing I want to just say, and I know that we have gone beyond our
we good
30 minutes, is in bringing back to the campaign for Black male achievement and this current movement for Black lives and social change and racial justice. Sometimes when you raise a flag for one thing, people want to automatically paint you against something else. And just because we raised the flag for Black male achievement, and we clearly articulated that was our point of departure, our narrow angle lens of targeted, universalism, right? And focusing on Black men and boys. But the wide angle lens is truly a community building strategy that is inclusive of women and girls, LGBTQ community, and the leadership and how we lead and how we step aside, how we mentor, and is not like, the 60s, right? And who's front and who's up front and whose voices, because we are seeing right now, Black women, not right now, as always, being the vanguard of change and organizing, and certainly legislatively, and the fact that we are going to have a Black woman as a vice president, and
speak, prophet, speak.
What that means, right? And so that's the change, right? And I'm going to send you this link. The sister Desiree Attaway, social justice scientist. She's on this podcast with me, what it means to be Black in America. And she lifts up a quote from Maya Angelou that talks about since the adorning of this nation, Black women have cared and nurtured for this nation.
Right.
They even nursed at their breasts white babies.
Come on here.
That they knew would grow up and kill their sons.
Woo!
And so, Pastor Mike last week
McBride?
No, not Pastor McBride. Waldron.
Yeah.
Preached a sermon and was talking about the role of woman in the gospel and in the resurrection, and did a litany of the states, right. Her names, right?
That's right.
I'll do that. And so I'm ready to stretch.
Good.
Right. That
we need you to.
Thank you.
We need you
I need you to. And what I want to say, brother, is we've been being more intentional about connecting because, in the 12-step program of Narcotics Anonymous say, what we can't do alone, we can do together.
Right.
And I think that our greatest challenge is the unity, right? And I want to tell you that I heard, I got a text from Kermit Moss the other day. I'm just checking in on you, brother. Right?
Yeah,
I just want to lift up in closing, how do we become really intentional about this whole 3 servants mindset where the 5-talent brother finds a 2-talent brother, and together they find the 1-talent brother, help him dig up the talent that he buried, bring their talents together, form 3 Servants Incorporated, and be about the Father's business, right? And that mindset, some days I'm the 1-talent brother, some days,
right,
5-talent brother, right? But I just want to say that I love you, man. And
love you more, man.
I remember we talked about this, that you were going to launch a platform. And I think a week or so after, you said it.
Yep.
I saw something posted. It's coming. Like, that's right. I said it. It's coming.
Yeah, I said it.
and here it is. You have spoken it into existence. And so let us stay connected, because I believe if we're intentional about doing stuff together, we can create some dope, catalytic, transformative stuff together on behalf of our community.
Amen. Last question I'm gonna ask everybody that comes on is, what are you reading right now, and why?
Wow. So I'm reading a multitude of books. If you look at my my Kindle, there's a few things that are open. One book that I just finished is Dream Big by Bob Goff. I don't know if you've heard of him. Has done a lot of ministerial work overseas. Know what you want, why you want it, and what you're going to do about it. Talks a lot about focusing on your goals, your dreams. He talks about service. And let me just say, one thing he says, when you get laser focused on your ambitions and your whole life is angling toward them, you'll see more clearly which of your current commitments and choices are launching you forward and which are standing in the way of your progress. Some of that is being clear on what I say, not only what I say yes to, but what I say no to.
Yeah.
Get more disciplined with that. I got here this little small book here, curated by Kendra Rankin. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Words of Change, Anti-Racism, Powerful Voices, Inspiring Ideas. Ironically, last weekend was my last weekend going into the office. I had to pick up something, and there was this package from Kendra of with this book inside and a card. And I contributed an essay to her book, How We Fight White Supremacy. Had no idea that she was going to include me in this new book, but I'm flipping through here, and there's quotes from Ida B. Wells, right? Barack Obama, Angela Davis, and I turn and she has a quote from Shawn Dove in here, and the quote is, and I'm not saying this in a way of hubris, right?
Right.
I want to go back to that imposter syndrome.
Why me? Why should I be in
Why
there with
me,
all?
right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the quote is, belief in the humanity of Black people is the first telling blow to white supremacy, right? And God sent me back to the office just to, I thought I was going to get something else, but it was to get this, and that this is the season for all of us. And look, we had that conversation, we had this conversation a couple of weekends ago, that we have to get even more uncomfortable, step out of our comfort zone. And the last thing I will lift up is there's some work around the Kerner Commission that I am reading and studying, because, you know, that came out 52 years ago in 1968,
Yep.
a study in response to unrest in the ghetto, so to speak, and LBJ, you know, commissioned this group of researchers and legislators and social scientists. What was the cause? Hoping that, or thinking that it would be us, that, you know, it's the rabble rousers, this is the reasons for uprisings. And what it said is the same thing we're dealing with 52 years later. And, you know, that we are living in two different societies. It talked about housing inequities. It talked about the criminal justice system, and here we are. You know, a generation, you know, 52 years later.
Still talking about the same things.
And the fight continues. And so I'm reading that because I do feel that what are the lessons learned, mistakes made, opportunities lost. If Emmett Till was to the civil rights movement, and George Floyd is to this current movement, and I'm going to be as effective as I can, I need to study more. And the last thing I will say is we're talking about Black women. You know, thank God for the defying spirit of Mamie Till. Mamie Till said, no, we have—
Open that casket, yes.
Open the casket. Thank God for Ebony and Jet, right?
Yep.
Masters of our own media, to show the world what hate did to Emmett Till. But also, let's lift up in 2020, Darnella Frazier, right? The 17-year-old girl who stood on the side of that curb and filmed the murder of George Floyd, right? And so I'm still, you know, let's continue to unpack this, right? And,
we will.
You know, yes, you know, I said it.
Brother, thank you so much for being one of my initial guests on this wonderful conversation. I love you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
I love you more, and there's absolutely less you can do about it.
All right, family. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Hit my man Shawn Dove up. You can find him on all social media. You can find his website and all that stuff. He's easy to find. Just Google it, brother. If you Google Black Male Achievement, you'll get Shawn Dove. Love y'all, family. Thanks so much for watching.
All right, brother. Love you. More to come.
Yes, sir.